In this lab video, I'm going to provide you an introduction to JASP. I know you've just watched a video from the producers of JASP, but I think that some extra information is needed. So to get started, as a reminder from the video, data are not directly entered into JASP, but rather we're going to upload data from some other source. And in this class, the source that we're going to be using are Excel.csv files. When you open up Excel, usually you're working with what's called a workbook file, but we're going to be using something else, this .csv file. And JASP can also open data in other formats such as plain text, SPSS, which is another statistical software program, or something called Open Document Spreadsheet, but we're going to be using .csv. JASP only recognizes 3 variable types. It categorizes the variables as either nominal, ordinal, or continuous. So nominal data are, as we've talked about, those separate categories, those groups that don't overlap. Ordinal data are those separate categories that don't overlap, but they have a certain order to them. And then everything else is going to be a continuous variable, meaning it is either equal, interval, or its ratio, and we can do math on a continuous variable. We can't do math on nominal and ordinal variables. When we are actually putting our data into JASP, however, JASP will automatically assume what type of variable it is, and we're going to have to go in often and change those variables to reflect what is actually in our data, and I'm going to show you how to do that. And finally, the most important part of JASP is something called the analysis ribbon. And this is where you're going to be able to tell JASP to do all sorts of analyses. And we're going to start this week with the descriptives part of the analysis ribbon. So let's take a look at JASP more deeply. Let's take a look at the Lab 2 directions. First of all, Lab 2 is all about just getting to know a little bit about JASP. And we're going to use a certain scenario as we look at some data. This scenario is from a mythical county health department who wanted to know if their health promotion campaign was being effective. And so they took 26 students and they put half of them in a control group and half of them in a treatment or experimental group. The treatment or experimental group watched a health promotion video and the control group got nothing. And at the very end, the researchers measured their health attitudes along with some demographic information. So what you're going to be doing in this assignment is you're going to complete a questionnaire. You don't have to turn it in. You're just going to complete it so you know what the students went through. And then we're going to do some things with JASP, and then you'll do the lab assignments. So let's buzz down to the questionnaires. So this is a basic survey about your health. And let's take a look and see what the students were asked after they were either exposed to the video or not exposed to the video. So question number 1 was, during the past 4 weeks, how much time has your physical health or emotional problems interfered with your social activities, like visiting with friends, relatives, and etc.? So write down the answer for yourself. Again, you're not turning this in. But the respondents were asked to indicate either 1 all of the time, 2 most of the time, and so on. That was the first question in the survey. And the second question actually is 4 questions. So the first one, other people seem to get sick easier than I do. Is that definitely false? Is it definitely true? 1 to 5. So go ahead and answer these 4 questions for yourself. Pause this presentation so that you can have time to answer fully. Okay, now that you've done that, I'm going to buzz down to demographic questions that were asked, because we often do this in research. So we had man, woman, non-binary, and other for gender identity. The question, did you watch the video, yes or no? That either puts them in the treatment group or the control group. Their age was asked for, their status in school, their GPA, and their major. So these are things that the researchers think might have had something to do with their answers on the health quiz. That's why we ask these demographic questions. Okay, let's go back to the lab directions. All right, so your very first job is to open the spreadsheet in JASP. Now, by now, the very first step of this module was to download JASP on your computer. If you haven't done that, stop now, because it won't make any sense to you unless you have this available to you, and download JASP. Okay, I think we all have it. So what you're going to do next is save the Lab 2 data CSV file to your documents folder or whatever folder you prefer. So I'm going to come to our class site, and I'll go to our Lab 2 instructional materials, and I'm going to scroll down to the data set. This is what is meant by the Excel file that you need to download. So I'm going to click on download this data set, and it downloaded, but I'm going to open it. I'm going to save it, and I'm going to save it in my documents folder or my downloads folder, maybe. No, I'm going to save it in my documents folder, Lab 2 data, save. Okay, and it's always going to ask me, are you sure you want it as CSV? And the answer is yes. So now we have the data in our Excel form. But what we're going to do right now is we are going to look and see what data we have. So we have something called subject ID right here. And this is just subject number 1, subject number 2, and so on. This doesn't have any numeric value. This is a categorical variable. It's just a label. We can't do math with this subject ID. So we're basically ignoring it at this point. But what it does tell us is that we have a subject number 1, and this is all the data that goes with subject number 1. This is person number 2, and this is all the data that goes with person number 2. Very good. Okay, so we've got that. But what we need to do before we get ready to put this data into JASP is we need to make sure that our cells are formatted correctly. So the way that we do that, first of all, is I'm going to click on all of the numbers in the first column. And we talked about how this is a categorical variable. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Format Cells, and I'm just going to make it a text variable because I'm not going to do any math on it. I want to make sure I know that that is not a number that we can do math on. All right, gender is another text variable, right? We can't do math on gender. So I'm going to format the cells and make that a text variable. Video, yes or no, absolutely is a text variable. But the next one, age, is definitely a number. So I'm going to go ahead and just highlight the numbers. I'm going to right click on it and format the cells and make sure that it's a number. Just make sure it is. It says decimal places. You can get rid, you don't need decimal places for age, so I'm just going to put 0. Okay, status in school is a text variable, so I'm going to go ahead and make that a text variable. GPA is a continuous variable, so I want to make sure that this is all listed as a numeric variable. Right click it, format cells, and this time I do want to keep it at 2 decimal places because it had decimals. Major is going to be a text variable. Okay, and these are all the answers to the 5 questions that were on the health part of the quiz. So I'm just going to highlight all these numbers and make sure that they are indeed numbers, but I'm going to keep them at no decimal places because we don't need it. Okay, and now I'm going to save it. File, save, and it's, yes, I want to keep it. And now we can close out of it because once we have it all set up, we're going to import it as a file. So I'm going to close out, and it's going to ask me 100 times, are you sure? Are you sure? Yes, I don't know how to get around this. Maybe somebody else knows how to. Okay, good. So now we're all set. Let's go back to our instructions. So we saved the data, and now we're going to open JASP. Okay, so whenever you come to JASP, it's going to ask you to open a data file and take JASP for a spin, and that's exactly what we're going to do. And it says, sometimes I get this too, I don't know why. It says I'm going to go to my computer, I'm going to go to Browse, and I'm going to go to that folder where I saved it. I actually have it in a different folder, Lab 2 Data. I'm going to open it up, and voila, it is now in our JASP data set. So I want to see if JASP really did what it was supposed to do in terms of labeling our Variables. Subject ID, it's calling a continuous variable. I know it's continuous, it has this little ruler here, which means JASP thinks that this is either an equal, interval, or a ratio variable. It is not. It's a nominal variable. It's a category, so I'm going to just change it to nominal. Gender is nominal, so that's correct. Video, either yes or no watching it, is nominal. That is correct. Age is continuous, so that's the correct label. Status is listed as nominal, but actually it's ordinal because freshman is lower than sophomore, then lower than junior and senior. GPA is listed as a continuous scale variable. Very good. Major is nominal. And now we have the rest of our variables, which actually JASP is thinking they're ordinal, but we're going to consider them to be scale. So you need to make sure that these are all changed to scale or continuous variables. All right, I'm going to move over a little bit more. All right, now our data set is ready for action. Coming back to our directions, we need to do, the first step is to compute a variable. So what we can do in JASP is we can create a new variable that maybe adds up other columns, which is actually what we're going to be doing. So why are we doing this? Well, first of all, we have these 5 parts of the health scale, but I want to come up with a composite score, a composite health score. And to do that, I'm going to make a new variable. So I'm going to compute a new variable. I'm going to hit the plus sign here, and it says create a computed column. And I'm going to say that this is a scale variable. These all have those little rulers. And I'm going to click on the hand button because I don't want to write code for this. So this is the hand button. We'll just call it health. And I'm going to click on create a column. And now what I'm going to do is it says, well, what do you want to create? So I'm going to select, I'm going to come over here to my variables. I'm going to scroll down and pick H1 and hit the plus sign. Then I'm going to hit H2 and hit the plus sign. H3 and hit the plus sign. And this is what you're going to need to do on yours, and hit the plus sign, and then H5. And then I'm going to press compute column. It says computed columns code applied. So I'm going to come on over here and see that we have a health column. I just want to check and make sure it was done correctly. So I see 4, let's start here. 3 plus 4 is 7, plus 4 is 11, plus 5 is 16, plus 4 is 20. So that seems to have worked just fine. So now we have a composite health score. That's pretty good, huh? Now, we've already done that, so we're good. The next step is we're going to be looking at the analysis ribbon, or the JASP ribbon, as they say. So for part 1, you're going to click on Descriptives, drag down to Descriptive Statistics. We're going to check the box for frequency tables, and we're going to open the Statistics menu and uncheck everything there. We're going to move the nominal variable to the variables box and hit OK. So that might seem a lot right now, but let's just dive in and do it. So I'm going to come up to Descriptives, and I'm going to click on frequency table. I'm going to come to statistics, and I'm going to uncheck everything here. This is going to become clear as to why we're doing this later. All I'm going to be doing right now is moving over the nominal variables. And because we have already set up our data this way, it's easy to pick which are the nominal variables. They're the ones with the 3 circles. Now, subject ID, we're never going to mess with it. Just leave it alone. It means nothing. But we're going to move gender over by clicking on it and clicking the arrow. And then video, we're going to move that over too. Status, freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, we're going to move that over. And we're going to move major over too. And what we have now, and I'm going to click this button to make it larger so you can see it, is we have our output. This is actually what you're going to be submitting, part of what you're going to be submitting. So this gives us descriptive statistics. It gives us frequency tables for all of our nominal variables. So let's read this frequency table. We have females and males. We had 16 females and 10 males. That means that 61.538 are female and 38 and some odd percent are male. Valid percent, you don't need to worry too much about that, or cumulative percent either. But right now, this is, and then we have the total and then 100%. So let's take a look at the frequencies for video. It looks like 13 people saw the video, 13 people didn't. So a nice even 50-50 split. All right, and finally we have things like freshman, sophomore, junior, senior. We can very easily see that most of the people in the study were sophomores. In fact, these aren't in order. They're in alphabetical order, it looks like. What's missing? Well, nobody's actually missing. Like, everybody has data in the study, but it looks like seniors are missing. There's nobody in the study was a senior. And then the frequencies for major are here. You can see where everybody measured, and looks like nursing was the predominant group here too, with all the percentages. So these are frequency tables that you can make with JASP. Now, all I have is the output. To get back, I'm going to click on this arrow to make it smaller, and now I'm back at my analysis ribbon. Very good, right? Okay, let's see what the next directions tell us to do. Okay, so for part 2, we're going to go to the descriptives menu. We're going to hit on descriptive statistics. We're going to select all the scale variables or the continuous variables, the ones that have rulers, to the variable box, and we're going to click OK. And then we're going to see some more tables. That's pretty cool, right? All right, so in order to do this, I don't want to, if I remove this back over here, I lose it in my table. So I don't want to do that. I'm going to put that back. Instead, the way to start over is just to hit descriptives again. That way your tables are retained. And I'm going to move all the scale variables over as requested. And there's a quick, easy way to do this. If I click on the first one, I hold down the Shift key and I click on all of them. I can move them all over at once. I'm not going to click frequency tables because with continuous variables, we don't do that. We're going to just look at the mean, the median, and the mode and all that good stuff. So I'm going to click the arrow here to make the output bigger. Here we go. Now these are the descriptive statistics. Here we have the mean, the average, we have the standard deviation, which you're going to be learning about. We have the minimum score and the maximum score. This really doesn't give us a lot of information, so it's there, but I would not get all caught up in it. So the average age is 23.346. The average GPA is 3.1, and these are the average scores for each of the variables. It's interesting, isn't it? And then the health composite score is here. The average health composite score is 13. So out of, I'm not even sure, I'd have to go back and look. Okay, so these are the descriptive statistics, and this is going to be part of your output that you turn in. Now I'm going to go back up and just show you that all the other things that you did previously are still there as well, aren't they? Yes, so I'm going to click this to make it smaller. All right, now I'm back to my regular pane. Let's take a look at the directions to see what's next. Okay, the next two analyses are going to compare mean, range, and standard deviation for the scale variables. Okay, so you're going to need these values to complete the worksheet for this lab assignment, the lab quiz. So from the JASP analysis ribbon, we're going to hit descriptives, descriptive statistics. We're going to move gender to something called the split box, and we're going to move health to the variable box. So let's see what that does. So I'm going to start over again. Remember, I'm not going to mess with anything here because I want my tables to stay. So I'm going to go to descriptives, and it said to put gender in the split box and health in the variable box. What did that do for us? Well, let's take a look at the table that it provided. So what it did is it showed us the health scores by female and male. So females had a health score of 13.75, males had a health score of 13. So when you split out by a certain variable, you can see the differences. That's kind of cool. Now, we don't know if this is a statistically significant difference. That's something you're going to learn later in the semester. Okay, so that's the first one we needed to do. Let's take a look at the next one. Here's number 2. Move video to the split box and move health to the variable box. Okay, we're going to do that next. So in new descriptives, I'm going to put video in the split box, and I'm going to put health in the variables box. Now video means, did they watch the video? Did they not watch the video? And their health score is the dependent variable in this case. So here we go. The people who didn't watch the video had a mean health score of 12.6. The people who did watch the video had a mean health score of 14.3. Does that mean that the health score increased their attitudes towards health? Well, that's probably what the researchers want to show. Whether or not this is statistically significant, again, we'd have to figure that out later in the semester. But for now, you know that you can split out this health variable by people who watched the video versus people who didn't watch the video. Okay, I'm going to close this out by clicking this arrow, and let's see what the directions say next. That's it. So now we're going to have to save the JASP file, copy and paste it into a Word document. You're going to submit your output in the lab assignments part 1 and 2. So what I'm going to do now is show you how to save your output. I'm going to come over here. I'm going to click there. Doesn't really matter. See where this big results word is? That's what you're going to want to click on the arrow, and you want to click on copy. When you do that, it copied your whole output. Then you're going to open up a Word document, and you're just going to paste the output there. And voila, it's there. Everything that you just did is exactly there. Yes, that's the last thing we did, and that's the first thing that we did up here. So now you're going to file and save it, give it some sort of a name. Lab 2 output is fine. You don't need to put your name in the title because when you submit it via Canvas, your name is attached to it. I'm going to go ahead and hit save. That is it. Now, if you are using a Mac, you're going to want to save this as a PDF because I cannot read Pages files. So you can submit it as a PDF as well. All right, that is it. So let's go and see where you're going to submit your JASP output on our course site. In our modules section, here's the output submission link. You're going to click on this. You're going to open it up, and when you do so, you can submit your output there. Okay, and then the last thing that you're going to do is the lab assignment, which basically is just a sort of a comprehension check to make sure that you understand what it is that we just talked about in this lab. All right, you may have questions, and I hope you bring them to the Hallway Conversations forum because I am here for you, and I hope you enjoy playing with JASP.